Has anybody that you've spoken to claimed to have ever had sex with an alien?
Yes.
Has there ever been that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, tell me more. Now I'm intrigued.
It was reptilians.
Okay.
And they said they were just great.
Great at sex.
Great at sex.
I got love for the game. Bring it back to the golden age when them fresh beats knocked in. Whatever happened to real hip hop? Love for the game.
Stacy, welcome to Raw and Relentless. I am really excited for this, not only because we've been talking a little bit before we started rolling on the cameras. It's almost become a meme on my show where I talk about UFOs and aliens at least once every episode because it's something that I recently got really into and went down the rabbit hole. But it's not necessarily my specialty, which is why I'm really excited to have someone like you on because you're obviously the leader of the MUFON. So let me read this real quick for everybody listening and introduce Stacy properly. Stacy Wright is the state director for Arizona MUFON and also the director of Phoenix MUFON. Stacy is a certified field investigator for MUFON and over the past 13 years has helped to build the Phoenix MUFON chapter from the ground up to become MUFON's international chapter of the year. Stacy has worked as team leader on Roswell archaeological digs, helped design and produce the Phoenix Lights exhibit for the Arizona Historical Society Museum, acted as MUFON's coordinator for the 2018, 2019, 2020 Field Investigator boot camps, and was team leader for the revision of MUFON's State Director Handbook. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a joy to be here.
What an amazing biography. Yeah. So like I was saying, I'm really excited because not only are you someone who specializes in this is something you live and breathe. And this is like, you obviously, like you said before we started rolling, you research a lot about it and you take it seriously as a science. And I really like that. But also, you're the first female guest we've had in about 30 episodes of this Raw and Relentless podcast.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm honored.
Yeah. So tell me, a little bit about, or more tell the viewers, like, what is MUFON? How did it get created? And like, kind of what's the mission statement here? Describe this to me.
Okay. Well, MUFON is the acronym for the Mutual UFO Network.
Okay.
It was started in 1969 and it took off where Project Blue Book left. So a lot of people who might not know their history well have seen the TV show on, the Science Channel or Discovery or whatever it was called Project Blue Book. So back in 1947, we had Project Sign, then Project Grudge, then Project Blue Book. And this was the Air Force's first attempt at trying to explain what people were seeing in the skies. They didn't do a very good job of it, and they actually had J. Allen Hynek, who was the person that they brought in to debunk everything. After so many cases of looking into, the statistics and just the information that they're gathering about these UFO sightings, he realized that this stuff is for real. So he really changed his tune from debunking it to trying to prove that it was all real stuff. So, we love J. Allen Hynek for what he did. And so Project Blue Book took off, didn't really do a lot because, it was run by the Air Force. So they're not going to disclose too much to the public. So MUFON took over, and MUFON is the world's largest UFO sighting reporting database. We hold that. So there's a lot of other groups out there that will take your sighting reports, but they do not investigate it. And so one of MUFON's little slogans is, others talk, we investigate. And that's absolutely true. MUFON is the world's leading investigative source for UFO sighting reports.
I see.
So it's a worldwide organization. It's a 501c3 organization. So it's all volunteer. We all have, regular day jobs, do our stuff, and do this on the side as volunteers. There's MUFON pretty much in every country in the world. In the United States, there is MUFON in every 50 states. In Arizona, we have 3 chapters. We've got Phoenix MUFON, Sedona MUFON, and Sholo MUFON. So we've got 19 field investigators just in the state of Arizona. They're all certified in what they do. And yes, we do take this as a science. The study of ufology is a really serious thing. And especially lately with all the news that has come out of the Pentagon, Washington, D.C., the Navy, there's some stuff out there that just cannot be debunked. And so we're liking that I told you so thing going on right now.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I didn't know what to expect when I came to that MUFON meeting a couple months ago at this point. And I don't even know how I found out about MUFON. I think I might have been watching a documentary and it got mentioned, or someone, I think my buddy Clark, who came to the meeting with me, he went on a UFO tour in Sedona where they took him out with like night vision goggles and they saw the lights in the sky.
Oh, yeah, that's fun.
Have you done that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have some night vision goggles, so I use them a lot.
Do you need the military grade night vision goggles to get it?
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
You do.
Because I bought some $200 ones from Walmart and they were not working.
Yeah, no, you got to have the good Generation 3 or better to really see what you want to see.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm interested in that even alone, but like, so I didn't know what to expect when I came to the Phoenix MUFON. I'd obviously even heard about Travis Walton's story. And that was like the main reason I wanted to go, because being someone who recently got down the rabbit hole, I didn't really take a lot of the abduction stuff seriously because, you know, people can see things. I've definitely seen things I can't explain, not even UFOs, just like paranormal stuff. And paranormal also has a kind of a stigma, but it's just outside the normal. I can't explain it. Right. And that's kind of where Travis, his story really captivated me, because unlike a lot of what people would think is an abduction story, like, oh, sure, you got abducted by aliens, his has a lot of corroborating evidence that really is hard to debunk.
It does. Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, like, when I showed up there, I didn't know what the demographic would be, male, female, what age range and whatnot. And I'll be honest, I was very surprised by by the people I met there, including yourself. I was not expecting the head of the Phoenix MUFON, which is like saying I'm the head of the Los Angeles Lakers. Like, of all the basketball teams, this is like the big one, because Phoenix is pretty famous for mass UFO sightings. And so what was the moment? Do you remember the moment that you became interested in this specific phenomenon yourself?
Well, you know, I was always interested in the universe, even as a kid. You know, I was always interested in the stars and loved to just sleep out in the backyard and stare up at the sky at night. You know, I just always loved that. I never really thought about UFOs too much. You know, we all grew up with Star Trek and the Jetsons and stuff like that. So, yeah, we knew that was out there. But I never really got into the whole UFO alien thing too much. Went to college at Idaho State University specifically because they had a great astronomy program there. And, but really never too much still into the UFO thing. You know, it was just more into astronomy. And then all of a sudden, Jim Mann was helping me run Phoenix MUFON. We started that together back in 2007. And we were talking one day and we just thought, you know, there's this world-class city here that had the Phoenix Lights, for God's sake. There's got to be some kind of a cool UFO meeting going on. And so I looked out online and I found this weird thing called MUFON. I thought, wow, you know, I wonder if they have meetings. And it looked like they hadn't had anything. They'd lain dormant in Phoenix for about 8 years. So I wrote to someone at MUFON, not knowing that it was the executive director. And I said, hey, you know, what's up with Phoenix? We need to have a meeting here. And he said, well, let me get back to you. So about 2 weeks later, he got back to me. He said, I found a meeting for you. We're going to start one up. They're looking for someone to run it. So show up. So I showed up. There was about maybe 6 of us there. It was kind of crazy. It wasn't what I expected at all. You know, I thought, oh man, there's going to be so many fun people here. I can't wait, because people watching is a fun thing. Okay. So I thought, yeah, there's going to be weirdos and good people there. You know, it's going to be fun.
You were probably like me. You had no clue what to expect going into the meeting.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I just thought, this is interesting. I got to go check this out.
Yeah.
So there's about 6 people there. It wasn't anything too far out or anything like I was expecting, but they were looking for volunteers to try to, you know, start something up. So I raised my hand. I thought, you know, I can do this. This doesn't look too bad. Although I've never done any public speaking before, anything like that.
And here you are on a podcast.
I know. Yeah, here I am. But so anyway, we just kind of started that up, and it took off. People were so looking for something like this. They were just eager for it. And, you know, we started out small and we changed venues probably, oh my gosh, maybe 10 times, because we kept outgrowing the venues. We just kept getting people. So it was just kind of like, I don't know, like a switch just all of a sudden went off, and that was my main interest. So yeah, then there came the reading of the books and the research and the, you know, the looking into all this stuff. And it's just a fascinating subject that I still can't find enough hours in the day to do the reading that I would love to do and research on it. It's just, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing that I found really like refreshing is like before we even started rolling, you mentioned like, you know, we take this seriously. We don't want to joke about this. We want to talk about it seriously. And I was like, I'm totally with you. And it's like, it's crazy because like when I went to the MUFON, it was like I could finally openly talk about something that I'd been fascinated by. I've been going down the rabbit hole, but if I'm an entrepreneur, I have a business on the outside of this podcast. And so I'll go to like marketing conferences and business conferences. I'll try to describe this to other people. And then I'll realize exactly what you said. Like the moment I let the cat out of the bag, like I could talk about it for hours. And there's so much I want to, oh, and this happened, and then this happened, and then this is crazy.
Right.
And then they start looking at you like, oh my God, who is this guy? You know,
it's a wide range, this subject. MUFON does not like to say that it delves into the paranormal. But I have a little issue with that because it is all paranormal. Mm-hmm. It's anything that's outside of the normal. So when you're talking about ghosts, when you're talking about Bigfoot, you're talking about Mothman, you're talking about all kinds of things that people would consider paranormal, and you're just a wacko, you're just this woo-woo weirdo, you know. But then you can look at the UFO subject and find statistics and corroboration, and there's years and years of, just data that you can put together, and you can connect those dots. And this is not a joke. It's really happening.
Yeah.
So now we've got, big agencies out there that are backing us up, and yeah, it's all good.
So with one thing I didn't know about MUFON was that you said it was basically an extension of Project Blue Book. And so for the people who don't know, like that was government, that was a whole organization by them. Oh, yeah. Was that also related to Majestic 12? Was it basically the same thing?
Well, Project Blue Book was run by the Air Force, and it was an attempt to debunk the subject and make people feel like fools for looking into it. Because they knew there was stuff going on, and they couldn't explain it, and they couldn't fight it. It was a security risk, still is. So yeah, they just, wanted to debunk it, and that's what they started out to do, and then they couldn't, and it kind of all turned on them just a little bit. And so here we are now with people looking into this worldwide, and we're finding that there are, things that are so relative and so parallel worldwide, and it just cannot be debunked. What
do you feel like is the motivation for them originally trying to debunk everything? Was it like a national security thing, or was
embarrassment?
It like... Okay.
I mean, we don't understand this. We cannot duplicate it. We cannot fight it. There's a lot of things that they would be embarrassed about. And then you start one lie and you compound that with all kinds of other lies on top, such as the whole Roswell debacle. Okay. You look at something like that, and then pretty soon, there's nothing you can do to save face on that. So I think right now, that really is what's going on. If people were to say, oh, yeah, we lied all about that Roswell thing, or we lied all about Shag Harbor, we lied about the Gulf Breeze sightings. I mean,
what's Shag Harbor? I've never heard of that one.
Shag Harbor happened up in, it was in Canada, Newfoundland, maybe up in that area. And it was, I think we're talking about maybe late 50s. There was a Coast Guard vessel involved with this. There was, a bunch of fishermen there. They saw something go down into the water. They didn't know what it was. They saw the lights under the water, and they thought maybe a plane had gone down. They didn't know what in the world that could be because, we don't see a lot of UFOs flying around and then going underwater, which they do a lot. So they called the Coast Guard in. They called divers in. They couldn't find anything there, but they did see some tracking on radar under the water of this ship, and another one kind of like came to its rescue and went right over the top of it. So there was two of them submerged under the water. And there's eyewitness reports of this from the radar operators, and it's just, and they came up out of the water and took off into the sky. People did see that. So Shag Harbor is really an interesting story. People need to look into that. Just Google it, you'll find out the whole story. It's an amazing story.
Yeah. So one thing that really kind of like, I don't know, I almost had a little bit of an existential crisis when I first started looking into this, because, my whole life, I recently turned 30 this year, but like, for the first 28 and a half years of my life, in my opinion, or just not even my opinion, just what I assumed was UFOs and aliens, that's a thing of the movies. If they did come, they would be like Independence Day, like a big metal ship in the sky. Right. And I just assumed that. And I assumed that flying saucers, things like that, that was just like the Jetsons, like what you said.
Yeah.
But what really blew my mind is I saw a documentary. I think I watched the Bob Lazar interview with Joe Rogan.
Right.
That really got me to just do a quick Google search. And the first thing I found was that CIA.gov has a bunch of released documents that you can look at on their website. And it's not like a fake website. It is CIA.gov. And one of the documents I looked at was just a bunch of photos of flying saucers and UFOs. And I sent it to my mom, who... I don't even want to put her on blast, but I sent it to my mom, and I grew up in an army town, so we know a lot of the people in the military, right? And so if anybody's going to be like, oh, that's kind of crazy, it would be my mom, right? And I don't know, that's kind of where I started going down the rabbit hole, and it just blew my mind. And then I started trying to put the pieces together, and then it seems like it all really comes down to Roswell, right? That's like kind of where it began.
It is. It's, the best documented bunch of BS out there.
Yeah.
It's great. It's great stuff.
What's your take on Roswell? What do you think happened out there in the desert?
Well, I've talked to a lot of different people. There's a few different camps of thought on what happened at Roswell. Don Schmidt, he's a legend as far as the Roswell studies, and we've worked with him a little bit. We actually went out there on a Roswell dig. Phoenix MUFON took 10 of its members out there and helped dig and had a great time. It was just amazing archaeological dig out there.
Did you find anything?
I can't tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Like physical objects or just like readings on meters?
Yeah, no, we had a lot of readings on meters because we have, metal detectors out there. And this place is so wide open and so barren and so nothing out there in the middle of nowhere. I mean, nowhere. And so we had 4 film crews out there with us, one from Mexico, one from Denmark, one from Atlanta, and one from Great Britain. So it was very well documented. We gridded everything off, and we worked from sun up to sundown in some really harsh conditions out there. And just, we did a lot of digging in holes, animal burrows. They would take things down in the burrows. So the place has been scoured already. So you figure if you can't find anything on the ground, let's go underground. So the next step would be ground penetrating radar. We didn't have any of that with us that day, but that's coming up. Don wants to do another dig, so we'll probably incorporate that. But we did a lot of, metal detecting and found a lot of stuff. The Army had come in and seeded the whole area with 1 million nails. Nails to discourage anyone that was out there with their metal detectors. You're just going to get so frustrated, finding nothing but nails all day long, you're not going to come back again. So the site where we were at wasn't really what's considered the crash site out there at Roswell, but it was the debris site. So where the craft came in and maybe touched down, skiffed, bounced back up again, skiffed again. This was the debris field, and it's all based on what the wind conditions were at the time, and there's, historical fact on that. So we kind of laid all that out and figured what was the debris field. So that's where we scoured out there, and it was huge. The place is just huge. So
are these things that you can see on something like Google Earth, like something hit the ground here, something landed here, like little craters or something like that?
You could normally, but they were pretty smart. They came in there with heavy equipment, and they made their own mounds. They made their own divots. They dug out the hills. They made it look like you would never see anything there. So that just kind of leads me to believe that there must have been some giant scour marks in the earth or some kind of divot knocked out of the hillside. There had to be something there for them to have to go to all that, manpower and mess it all up again. Something
you just reminded me of was, I don't know if it was like a episode of Ancient Aliens or some random YouTube video I saw, but there's like basically long skid marks in this snowy area that's recent. And they think it's shaped like Oumuamua, the long
the interstellar object.
Yeah. Did you hear about that at all?
I did not. That's news to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was actually that. I feel like people would have been talking about if that thing came that close to where it...
I think if Oumuamua came in, it'd be all over the news.
Yeah.
Because the astronomers have been watching that now for the second time.
It's coming back?
It kind of came back around just a little bit. So there's some intelligence behind that for sure.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
What about that tells you or makes you believe that?
The object, when it was first noticed, came into our area, slowed down, and stopped. And then it backed out.
What?
So, yeah. So
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, I thought this was so interesting, and people really needed to hear about this, and I really wanted to get the astronomer who discovered it in, and I did talk with him on the phone, but he was a little shy about talking to a weirdo UFO group, and he didn't want to do that. So I talked to Dr. Kevin Healy, who runs the planetarium at Mesa Community College, And we've gone to their, Friday night spectacular thing that they have in there. I think it's every first Friday of the month they have this free planetarium show in there that's really cool. And he's the head of all that, and they do a fantastic job. So I had talked to him out there by the telescopes one night and talked him into coming to speak to us about this subject. He was a little leery, about, UFO group, really, but on something so technical, he thought, yeah, I want to come and talk about this. So he did. He came and he spoke at a Phoenix MUFON meeting about a year ago, did a fantastic job. Everyone loved it. And he just, gave everyone the facts. And people were pretty wowed by that.
And this is a non-biased scientist who, you said astronomer, and he was the one who discovered Oumuamua?
No,
Okay.
Dr. Kevin Healy is just our local expert.
Got it. Okay.
The guy who discovered it, I think his last name is something like Avi, something like that.
Interesting.
So I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, it is interesting. It's very interesting.
What do you feel about the recent news of like the Israeli government official who came out and said like the Intergalactic Federation said we're not ready to know about their presence and things like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've heard this before from other people years ago that we're just not ready. We're not, cool enough to know the secrets yet. We're still such a warlike species on this planet. Why would they ever want to come and help us, evolve a little more or whatever? We can't even get along with each other, and we're the same species, for God's sake. So I think we have a lot of work to do here on this planet before we might be able to be welcomed into the galactic thing out there.
I feel like what made that so compelling is like, there's been a lot of people who say like, maybe we're not ready. Maybe that's why we're not saying, but it always seems like speculation, right?
Right.
But when a government official says this galactic federation says we're not ready,
Yeah.
I
saw that too. I didn't look into it too deeply because I just wasn't sure it was going to go anywhere. Because like I said, I've heard this before from a lot of people who are not as high up as he is.
Is that guy still in the government? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what what level he's at or anything. But yeah, I read that all over, social media, and I thought, wow, dude.
Yeah.
You've got some backbone to come out and say that. I don't know if he's still got his job.
Yeah.
I kind of doubt it. But yeah, interesting and not too far-fetched when you really think about what's going on here on this planet right now, especially this whole last year. It's a crazy world we live in,
It almost seems like there's so much going on that as an attempt to take people's minds off of it, they're like, here, let's release the UFO files real quick,
Maybe a good distraction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what kind of blows my mind is like Louis Elizondo, who's the guy from the Pentagon who brought out those two or three videos from the Pentagon? He has a show on, I don't know if it's the History Channel or whatnot, called Unidentified, but it seems like this is a guy who is just like any ufologist, but he's now under the government's umbrella. Because from what I could gather, it seemed like other than those videos, he didn't really know a lot more than that.
Yeah, Lou Elizondo is not just a UFO guy. He's not even a UFO guy at all. He worked for the Pentagon. He was part of their security. He had a really big job there. And he decided after everything getting shot down, he, really needed to come out and tell people this stuff is all real. So that's what he's doing. He's pretty brave for doing that. And he had a crack team working with him at To the Stars Academy. I know now they're Lou, Chris Mellon, and one of the gentlemen left the group.
Why is that?
I don't know exactly. They just decided it was time. So they just did this maybe yesterday. Brand new news. They left the group. They're not with To the Stars Academy anymore.
Was it Tom DeLonge or someone else?
No, Tom's the head of the whole thing. It was, I just can't remember his name. Do you remember his name, Tara? It'll come to me later.
Yeah.
But yeah, 3 of the guys left. So Hal Puthoff is still very much involved with that. And, they'll carry it through and see what's going on. But, a lot of groups like this come and go. They do. It just, I think their funding wasn't where they wanted it to be. And they've been looking for funding publicly for a long time. It takes a lot of money to do what they do. But the show that they put out, Unidentified, I think that's one of the best things out there.
Really?
That show had truth to it. There is this, I've met a lot of the people on that show, and they're not lying. This stuff is really happening, and they're disclosing it, which is great.
Yeah.
So disclosure is happening with a small d, not a big D. It's happening every day, little by little. It's not one giant announcement, or one big landing on the White House lawn. It's not happening like that. It's just slowly information coming out and people coming to terms with it. Like you were saying, people just think you're a nut sometimes, It's great to have a healthy sense of skepticism on this. You have to have that. You can't just go out there and believe everything that you hear. I hear stuff every day here in Arizona, and because we've got a lot going on in the state. But if you believed everything that you ever heard, you'd go nuts for one thing, and you just can't. You have to have that healthy sense of skepticism to be able to determine and kind of use your BS meter on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's really important because there's just so much out there.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, even myself, I've kind of had this internal debate. I've talked about it with Chris a little bit. Even if I saw on a UFO, something I couldn't identify, something I couldn't explain, I personally don't even know if I would still 100% believe it was alien, right? It could be a top secret government project. It could be any number of things, or it could just be me trying to say that's unexplainable when it really is, right? So I agree with the healthy level of skepticism. I guess kind of along the same lines of where we were at is like part of with the little d, what you were saying, it almost seems like even with the little bits of information we get from these legit government sources, I'm not always quite satisfied. I'm not quite satiated with what is put out. Lou Elizondo's show Unidentified, for example. I watch it and I'm like, great. They're talking more in detail about these clips. They're interviewing the people on the ships who were there, who were looking at the radars and whatnot. All great information. But still, it's like, talk about Roswell. Talk about all this other stuff that they think the government is covering up. But it seems to me like, and maybe this is just because they're not telling everything that they know, but it kind of seems to me like they're giving us just the tip of the iceberg. They're letting us know about these clips, but it almost seems like the fact that they're kind of just not talking about all the other stuff makes me think that maybe Lou Elizondo is just being kept on the outskirts, like a little patsy. Like they're giving him just enough information. There's
always a script, too. You have to understand these shows that are being produced, they have their own agenda. And no matter what kind of information you want to put out there, I don't care if you're from the Pentagon or anywhere, if you don't go by their agenda, you're not going to be on their show. So they are scripted. They should want the truth, and we want to get the truth out. But there still is a little bit of scripting on some of this stuff.
What do you think the truth is?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's the big mystery out there. We're trying to connect the dots. We're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. But no, I don't think anyone knows exactly what's going on. I just know that we've been lied to since the dawn of time. Our history books need to be rewritten. There's a lot of stuff out there that just is not true. And we're coming to terms with some of that stuff. The more we dig into the past, archaeology is a big piece of this. We're finding stuff out.
Yeah. Speaking of archaeology, even the ancient aliens theory is something that I had never really gotten into. Like, I'm slowly getting more into it. I just recently, with Travis Walton's story, got more into the abductee side of things, right? But the ancient aliens, the archaeological stuff, I had Scott Wolter on, who is the host of America Unearthed, and he talks a lot about like the America geological things that a lot of people don't talk about. And one of the things that really blew my mind that he even showed me the stones on our episode was these stones that were dug up out of the ground in, I believe it was Mexico, and they are shaped like gray alien heads. They have carvings in the stone, and they carbon dated the inside of these carvings. They scratched out little pieces of it, carbon dated it, and it was carbon dated to 9,000 years ago from today, right? Before present. And that's mind blowing alone, especially when he said he probably has like 5 or 6 stones, right? They're all shaped like gray aliens and whatnot. They all have hieroglyphic type carvings in them. And he said in the background, I can actually bring up and I'll show it to you because I think it's worth showing it to you. But in the hieroglyphs, he said they're all like watermarks in the background. And he wrote down and documented every symbol he could find. And not one of them repeats. And there's thousands of them. And he said to him, now he's not like some language expert or anything, but he said to him, that tells him if not one symbol repeats and there's thousands of them, it's not an alphabet. And he said what he thinks it represents is basically hieroglyphic interpretation of telepathic communication. That's what he said. Now that's mind blowing.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Really, you know. Yeah, that's a good one.
So like that's one of the stones that he showed me.
Okay.
And then he turns it around, but I don't know if you can see it. There's like little symbol there, little symbol there, little symbol there, and
Right.
like those are the symbols that he said not one of them repeats, and he thinks it represents telepathic communication. So I mean, considering that was made 9,000 years ago, pretty mind blowing.
It is. Things are so much older. You know, I like to quote Graham Hancock on that. Everything is just so much older than what we've ever imagined that it could be. And if people want to look into this, like say you hear something like unidentified and you're not getting the whole story, people, do your research. There is tons of information out there, and we're at an age now where we have access to it. We never had this before the internet, so look into it. At our Phoenix MUFON meetings, we try to introduce material to people that then makes them want to go home and look into this stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe some of this stuff is controversial and we're stirring up a can of worms here. Good. Get your juices flowing. Go home and research this stuff. There's a ton of material out there, and everyone should do their own research. Only then can you really find out what it is that resonates with you and what the truth is for you, because it might be different for another person.
Yeah.
But, the archaeology that we're finding out now, everything is so much older than what we ever thought. And if people want a great person on that, read anything by Graham Hancock.
Fingerprints of the Gods.
That was my Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my Bible. That's what really got me started on the subject, was reading that book. And I've got it highlighted up and flagged on the sides. And, it's just, there's a lot of great stuff in there. And he's written a lot of good things since then. He just wrote a book about everything in the Americas. And it's great. I saw him speak over here in Tempe last year.
Oh, really?
And had his book before that, but had him sign it that day. And we've been trying to get him into Phoenix MUFON. I've been in contact with him for probably 11 years now.
Really?
I have emails going back 11 years.
Why don't you think he wants to come on?
He will not ever say the word extraterrestrial or alien in anything that he talks about.
I've noticed
but
that.
He will talk about ancient beings, but that's all he'll say. So he doesn't want to get involved or have anyone think he's part of the UFO crowd. I mean, I think we're a pretty cool crowd myself, but some people just think that, that's not so cool. So, yeah, he doesn't like to speak at UFO groups, but he'll speak about the whole subject without saying the words.
I see.
So I've seen him speak 4 or 5 times. So
interesting.
But he's a great researcher, writes some great books, and people should look into what he's writing.
Yeah. One of the guys you introduced me to after the meeting I attended was a guy named Michael Polanyi, who I guess is he's an expert on just the Antarctica Nazi UFO connection,
Right.
Which I find one of the most fascinating aspects of the entire, I guess, phenomenon or narrative, if you will, of what could have potentially happened. And what really got me down that side of the rabbit hole was like the guy, Tom DeLonge, to the Stars Academy. I think I saw in an interview he said somewhere where he thinks Roswell was actually Germans. He thinks it was a German ship with crashed Germans inside of it.
Yeah, I've heard that. I'm not sure I subscribe to that at all, but yeah, I've heard that. There's a lot of different theories.
Yeah.
But yeah, Michael Polanyi is a great researcher. We've had him speak to Phoenix MUFON twice over the years, and he's a good friend. He used to live here, and then he moved over to the Bay Area again, and now he's back in Arizona. So yeah, he's done a lot of really good research, and he's got some good stuff going on.
Have you seen some of the pictures that he had on his phone of like different UFOs he's seen?
Yeah, I have.
Those are pretty crazy. But like, again, it's like some of those pictures, a lot of the pictures you see, it's like a lot of times a ball of light.
Right.
And it's like, for someone who is a little bit of a skeptic or has a healthy level of skepticism, it's hard to say that this is definitive proof of
It's hard for even a certified field investigator to say this is definitive proof. We're lucky enough here in Arizona to have a master photo and video analyst. He's also our chief investigator for Arizona MUFON. And his name is Dennis Freyermuth, and he, helps run all of our field investigators and coaches them, and he's just a master at what he does. But he's got great equipment, great programs, great software to be able to find out what everything is or what it isn't. So we can we can pretty much look into anything and tell you, if that's a UFO or not.
Yeah.
An unidentified flying object, there's a lot of that out there. At first, they're all unidentified. They're all UFOs.
Yeah.
And then we find a little bit more about it and a little more, and we just, it's like an onion. You peel back the layers and you finally find out what's really going on. And then we can identify that with a disposition at the end of our report and let people know what it was. And a lot of people don't want to hear what our findings are. They're like, no, I know what I saw. It was much weirder than that. But there's a lot of weird out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in the skies that are really our stuff. People don't realize that our technology is probably 70 years in advance of what you could ever imagine. We've got some great stuff out there. So a lot of the stuff is ours. There's one researcher that lives here in the Valley and a great speaker. His name is Michael Shratt, and he is a great military aviation historian. And he can pretty much tell you what is what on stuff. I've talked with Michael many times about the Phoenix Lights, and he and I both agree that that's not our stuff.
What makes him say that? What do you mean? What?
Well, the fact that, back in 1997, our technology wasn't that cool back then, okay? Yeah. This thing that flew across the whole state of Arizona
Did you witness this?
I did not.
Okay.
I lived here, but I did not see it.
You were like, dang, I shouldn't have stayed inside that night.
Yeah, I had people from out of state actually call me and say, hey, there was a UFO in Arizona last night. And I'm like, what? So,
and this is before you were in the MUFON.
Right.
Okay.
This is before.
What was your opinion at the time when you...
My kids saw it.
Okay.
I did not see it.
Interesting.
But, the thing that flew across this state, and there wasn't just one. People don't realize there were 7 or 8 craft.
Wow.
Throughout all parts of the state that different people were seeing.
All big ones?
I'm not sure the size of them, but the one giant one, the boomerang-shaped thing that flew diagonally across this state, was so low and so slow and completely silent. We don't have that. We did not have that back in 97. Something that big that makes 0 sound and can be that low. I mean, everything we have that goes fast or that stays up in the air makes
really
big
loud
sound. Okay, we got propulsion that makes sound, giant sound. Well, back then we didn't have any technology to do that. We still don't, that I know of. So really, when you think of something that was the size of football fields in length, something that could fit, I don't know how many 747s on each side of it they said could go on there, something like 20. Okay, that's how big this thing was. It was huge. And for that thing to be flying so silently and so low right over the heart of a major metropolitan city and making 0 noise, you just had to look up to see it.
Yeah.
Or notice that maybe the stars had been blanked out somewhere like that, And yeah, I wish I could see something like that. That would be the coolest. To see the stars disappear behind, the wings of something like that.
Were the Phoenix Lights all after dark?
No, there was some during the day. I know there's reports of a bunch of people between Phoenix and Flagstaff on I-17. There's that big rest area called Sunset Rest Area or something like that right on the way up there. And there was people that were pulled off on both sides of the road watching this giant craft, and I don't think it was the same one. It was something different, flying down through that big canyon that's just to the west of that rest area. Everyone, hundreds of people pulled over to the side of the road watching this.
Dang.
There was another report of a Little League baseball game happening in Phoenix where, you had both teams, the coaches, the refs, the spectators on both sides, everything just stopped, and they just all stood there and watched this thing go right overhead. So there's reports of this. I mean, there was tens of thousands of eyewitnesses to the Phoenix Lights. It's still, to date, the largest mass sighting of any UFO ever. So we had tens of thousands of people that were eyewitnesses to this. We had 1,000 911 calls on it. And
did they scramble fighter jets or anything like that? I
heard that they did. I can't verify that. I heard that they did. I've heard from a couple different sources that happened. I know that out of, I think it was Davis-Monthan Air Force Base south of here, they did scramble a bunch of A-10 Warthogs. And they tried to cover up the whole story by bringing in a group that was called, I think it was Operation Snowbird. So the sighting that really happened was about 8:30 at night. And then what they said the sighting was later, there was a bunch of flares, military flares that they did drop at 10:30 at night to cover up the story. They said, oh no, we dropped flares. That's what you people were seeing. Nothing to see here, folks. It was really 10:30. It wasn't 8:30.
Swamp gas from Florida.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there was a cover up on that they tried, but it's, there's the military flare thing just doesn't fly.
Yeah. Have you ever had to try to have Fife Symington, who was like the governor at the time, come and attend a Phoenix MUFON or anything like that?
No, we haven't asked him. From what I understand, he's living in California somewhere now, living the life of leisure, and I don't think he delves into this. He was an eyewitness, and he says, I'm not sure I believe that, though.
What do you mean?
Because he debunked it so badly on camera in the State House down here, to such a bad degree when he brought out that guy dressed up as an alien. That was so demeaning and so insulting to everyone who really did witness this event. And he lost a lot of likes on that one. I mean, people just hated his guts. So then all of a sudden later he comes out and says, yeah, I did see that. I witnessed the Phoenix Lights too. I'm sorry, but yeah, I did. Well, who's going to believe him now? You lied once before. Who's to say you're not lying again now? I don't believe him because it would just be so easy for any politician to say that.
Other than the validation of the people he pissed off over 20 years ago, what reason would he have to come out now and say, I believe that it's unexplainable, it wasn't ours, it wasn't flares, and I did see it? What's the motivation behind that?
I don't know, just to jump on the fun wagon, I guess. And James Fox, got him on camera stating all this, and James did a great documentary called I Know What I Saw that has Fife Symington on there stating his stuff. So yeah, you can believe him or not. I simply don't because I just don't.
Yeah. One of the frustrating things for me personally about the Phoenix Lights is, unlike Roswell, there's not a whole lot of tangible things that we can do to further investigate it. And again, I'm not a ufologist, right? So maybe I'm wrong here. But like Roswell, there's a lot of eyewitness accounts. There's witnesses who were there who helped clean it up. There's newspaper articles. There's just paper trails, right? But with this, it was kind of like, from what I'm gathering, lots of videos of lights, lots of people talking about seeing the lights, but then the government said it was flares, and then that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
There's no whistleblowers. Like, I was scrambled, I saw it, I was up close, I tried to scramble. Like, there's none of that, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, am I wrong? Is there more things that maybe I'm just not looking into about the Phoenix Lights?
When you look at the origin of the Phoenix Lights, the craft that people were seeing, I think it started basically in Henderson, Nevada. So Las Vegas, coming from that area all the way across the state, pretty much followed our freeway all the way down, all the way across the border.
Was this after Will Smith's Independence Day came out?
When did that come out?
That was early 90s, might have been.
Yeah, so this was 97.
They were probably like, shoot, someone beat us there already. We got to go.
Got our idea. But, so a lot of people have said, well, it had to be something from Area 51. It came from that area. It had to be something. So if that was the case, you have to look at it two different ways. If it was ours, super secret thing that we're keeping up there at Area 51, so what, we let it loose and we go parade it over the top of a major metropolitan city?
Yeah.
That's a really good way to keep it secret, so that doesn't really fly with me. So if it was something alien, say it was theirs, still maybe it escaped, it got loose from Area 51. I mean, what? You let it loose? So I don't know. We just don't know what that is. But I know in talking with Michael Shratt and going over some of these details on this, he says, no, that was not ours. It couldn't be. We just didn't have the technology to do what that did.
Yeah.
So, we don't have proof, but we do have eyewitness testimony. So there's a big difference between evidence, which is what we have, and proof. Yeah. We have the evidence in that we have mass amounts of eyewitness testimony. When you have that much eyewitness testimony, it becomes evidence.
Yeah.
We just can't call it proof because we don't have something tangible in our hand.
I think that's the other frustrating thing about all the eyewitness testimony is, even though there's thousands of them, it seems like to me, half of them are saying it was one big craft. And then you get another percentage of people who are all saying, no, it was a bunch of little craft.
Yeah.
It
almost seems like that maybe the phenomenon presents itself to each specific viewer. Because I know I've heard people say numerous times that they saw something. They were with other people. No one saw that. Just them.
Huh.
Just them. Say something happened to their whole house. Say their whole house was, I don't know, bathed in light from a giant ship or whatever happened. None of the neighbors saw this. It does seem to be specific to people sometimes, very much so.
Yeah. I found it fascinating during Travis's interview at the MUFON meeting. He said something that really fascinated me, which was they asked whoever, what was the name of the guy who was interviewing him?
Shane Hurd.
Shane.
Yeah.
Shane asked, have you seen any other UFOs afterwards? And I don't know if you caught this, but he was like, I mean, look up in the sky, you're bound to see one. I mean, pretty much everybody's seen one. And I'm like, I've never seen one. And I look all the time. And Phoenix is interesting because like we have the airport right here. So even if I'm always looking at the sky, I'm going to see about 10 planes at any given time in the
They're
day.
all stacked up on the horizon. Yeah. But you got to really look, and the more you look, the more you learn to discern what things are. So, if it's got something blinking on it, probably an airplane. Get out your good binoculars, take a look. You got some red and green lights on each side blinking. Okay, airplane.
Yeah.
And, if there's noise, if you see it moving like an airplane would, it's probably an airplane. But, you really got to look at stuff. You watch something for a long time and all of a sudden you see it take a sharp right angle turn. We don't do that. Okay. Our stuff doesn't do that. We don't have the technology to do that and survive it.
Yeah.
So you see something taking a sharp right angle turn, you can pretty much bet that that's not anything that we've built.
Yeah. Being that you try to take a scientific approach to looking into the topic and the phenomenon, do you yourself like to put together almost like a detective, a narrative of what could be going on? Or do you try your best to say, this is all I know? Kind of like a Graham Hancock. I'll make interpolations and kind of imply it, but I won't outright say it. Like, where do you stand on all that?
Well, we've got to stand on just the facts, ma'am. We do. We have to gather the facts and go with those facts. We might all have our own interpretation of what went on, but we have to go with the facts. It's the science. It's just the science of it. Everyone wants to hear an outrageous, fun story. Yeah. But you have to stick to the facts and just go with that. We can't make up our own stuff, and it's really hard to put a story to things. And the people that we hear the stories from, they want to hear that. They want to hear all kinds of cool stuff about their sighting.
Yeah.
But we have to go back to them and give them just what we learned about it. And, we don't know what this was. We can call it an unknown. And the unknowns are the really cool things that we do. 95% of everything that we investigate can be found out to be something else. It's that other small percentage that's the interesting part. So even if there was only 1%, well, what was that?
Yeah.
What was that? We can't explain that. It is unknown. So that's where the phenomenon lies.
And that's the 1% that got the Project Blue Book guy, what's his face? J. Allen Hynek, to actually start supporting this after.
Because even if there's 1%, yes, those were his words.
Have you ever seen that video of, I believe it was NASA video, looking at the sun where this big black sphere is drawing plasma out of the sun? That one not only blows my mind, but really scares me when they say that's the size of the Earth and it just kind of zips off real quick,
Yeah, I can't explain that. It's a really interesting photo.
Yeah.
Very interesting, or video. I've seen both. So your mind can spin on that a little bit, and that would be really cool.
Yeah.
That's very sci-fi to us, but maybe not so fi.
Yeah. I'm almost tempted to ask you about everything that I'm wondering. Do you mind if I kind of just
go ahead. I don't know it all, but I have just.
Do you believe that there are bases on the moon?
I kind of do. The moon is really not normal. It's not like anything else out there.
What do you mean?
It's not it's got some different characteristics to it.
You want to describe some of? I know of them, but just for the people listening, do you want to kind of go into that?
Just the way it's in orbit around our Earth. There's been I've heard people say that there's a sound to it. Okay. There's a different sound to it. It'll ring like a bell.
I've heard that too.
I don't know for a fact if that's true. I've just seen what I've read on it. But, the moon's kind of strange. And I know that when our astronauts were up there on the moon and then all of a sudden everything stopped, I think that's pretty strange. Why didn't we go back? Why didn't we keep going back? Why didn't we keep investigating what's going on up there? We just stopped.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say that, we were warned off the moon. We were warned away from there,
Yeah.
So I think that's just about as easy to believe as anything else.
Yeah.
Because it is strange that we just stopped.
Well, the counter argument to
need
that
to,
would
you know.
be like just thinking about all the money it takes to create a ship and get all the fuel to go up to there, right?
And then we just stop our exploration.
Yeah.
There had to be a really good reason for that. Really good. Something scary, maybe. So, I don't know. It's not impossible that maybe we were warned off the moon.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you heard that apparently during the transmission, there's like a 2-minute missing audio where apparently they switched over the medical channel and said, they're here, they're watching us, they're sitting right over the crater. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I have.
What's your whole take on that? Do you take that as actual evidence or is that kind of hearsay?
No, I don't. It can't be proven right now that it's real, you know?
Yeah.
It's a great story. Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
But no, I can't go with that as being the real stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that those astronauts, when they came back during that press conference, they seemed distraught. They seemed like they didn't want to say anything.
It was
You know?
odd. That was odd. Very odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
All right. What about Mars?
I've talked with Edgar Mitchell a little bit about this.
Really?
I met him and
He passed away.
he did,
didn't he?
a few years
Okay.
ago. Yeah. But, you know, he had some great stuff to say about it. And according to him, yeah, there's stuff, there's beings. We're not alone.
So he is one that fascinates me because I haven't looked a ton into Edgar Mitchell, but I know that he was he like the 6th man to walk on the moon?
Right.
But his whole take on everything is so opposite of what every other astronaut is willing to say.
Yeah.
And it's also a kind of extreme too.
He was very mindful about everything. You know, he really thought about stuff. He wasn't just your basic engineer up there on a spaceship. He really had a good feeling about stuff. I think that he really had an understanding of what was going on.
Interesting.
You know, he just seemed like
Yeah.
he was really into it, and he just wanted to say something about it, but he just couldn't go that far.
So is he a guy who was into aliens and UFOs before going up there?
I don't know exactly.
Gotcha.
But I think if he wasn't before, he was after.
Yeah. What does he say about it?
He just said that we're not alone. He wouldn't go into a lot of detail on that, but he verified to me that, yeah, we're not alone.
Yeah.
So there's something going on. He just didn't want to go into it maybe, or maybe it was just too deep to go into. I don't know. Maybe his family was in danger if he went into it. I don't know. There's all kinds of spook stuff out there. So
Well, Buzz Aldrin also says a lot of cryptic things too. You know, he talks about the monolith on the moon of Mars.
But Buzz has gone back and forth
Yeah.
a couple of times. So I don't know about Buzz. I just don't know quite what to think about him.
Well, you would think if anybody knows, he would have to know, right?
You would hope that
Yeah.
he'd be telling the truth. Yeah, but I don't know. I've seen him back right off of it and dismiss the whole idea. So I just don't know what to think about Buzz.
Yeah. So let's say tomorrow, big disclosure with a capital D happens. What happens to MUFON? What happens to ufologists?
We might be out of business, you know?
Okay.
And that would be a great thing for all humanity. I mean, really, we need to have this come out in the open. This needs to be brought out. It's been a secret for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I think we're ready. You know, humans are pretty adaptable.
Yeah.
We're pretty flexible. So I think that we're ready. We're killing ourselves here. You know, we need a little bit of help. So, hey, if, you know, some extraterrestrial awesomeness comes and wants to give us a hand and just, you know, maybe we just need a little bit of something to tweak us to make us do things right. Bring it,
Yeah.
please.
What do you
help
think it
us,
would take
you know?
for capital D disclosure to happen? Like, what does that look like?
You know, I don't even really know. I just think that, you know, like I mentioned before, as a species, we're rotten. We are rotten. We are mean. We are warlike. We can't get along. We don't know how to even take care of our own species, much less try to interact with another one. So I don't know. That's just a big, huge mystery. It really is.
Yeah. I was talking with Chris about this a couple of days ago, and, you know, we were talking about like how a lot of people are saying maybe they're interdimensional, maybe they're from another planet. And I was trying to think to myself, well, what would be scarier to me is, are they from another planet and have technology for interstellar space travel that we don't have or even know how to physically create? Or would it be scarier that they're in another dimension? Because I think that's a reality that most people haven't even considered.
I think it's probably a mixture of both. I think there's a lot of things that we, like, take Bigfoot, for example. Okay? We've had documentation on this, drawings of it on cave walls. We've had oral stories passed down through our indigenous peoples all over the world about this creature. We think it exists. We've seen tracks. We've seen talked to eyewitnesses. We've seen things that have been built. We've got footage. We've got audio. We've got all kinds of things, but we cannot get a Bigfoot. Why is that? We can't find a bone. We can't find a skull. We can't find a den. We know bones. We find skulls, skeletons, and dens for every creature that lives on this earth, but we cannot find one for Bigfoot. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It might mean that it's just an interdimensional being, and it can go in and out at will, so it doesn't have to get caught. It doesn't have to get killed. It doesn't have to be found. So to me, that's the best explanation for Bigfoot that there is. It is an interdimensional creature. So I think if it's possible for one creature to be like that, surely it's possible for others. And yes, I do believe that extraterrestrial beings that we're seeing 1 second and not seeing another second, and all this weird stuff is happening to us that we can't explain. Why wouldn't it be interdimensional? Our know-it-all scientists out of there and our theoretical physicists have already told us that they have identified 11 different dimensions that we have out there. And they think there's lots more. They just can't get to them yet.
Is this just theoretical physics, or is it like actual proven mathematical physics?
Everything's theoretical to begin with until it's proven. That's like when people talk about pseudoscience. Well, everything's pseudoscience until it becomes science. Everything. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that it hasn't been proven. It hasn't been researched enough. We're still finding out about it. We're still learning. So, theoretical physicists, they're on the right track. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is kind of random, and I don't like to venture off too far, but have you ever had a psychedelic experience at all with psilocybin or anything like that?
No.
So I've never really been open to anything like that until recently. About a month ago, I took some psilocybin mushrooms, right?
Okay.
And I had an experience where I was seeing visuals, and people talk about seeing visuals, but for me, what really blew my mind was kind of when you look at it from a scientific point of view, where I felt like I was seeing things differently, and I didn't know what it was like to hallucinate or whatever, but I was looking at the TV and the colors are kind of melting like watercolors, right? And so I look up because I wondered to myself, well, what would happen if I looked at the popcorn ceiling, the texture on the ceilings? Would they melt together? What would that look like? Yeah. So I look up at the ceiling, and the popcorns on the ceiling or whatever, they all just kind of rearrange like pixels on a screen. And they form the fractal of faces that people talk about in those fractal artwork. Yeah. Have you seen that kind of artwork?
Yeah.
It looked verbatim like that. Okay. And they rearranged, and I saw that, and I kind of felt like it was another scary consciousness, right?
Yeah.
It is a little scary. Yeah. So then I look down, I go, whoa, that was crazy. And then I look up, and then they rearrange again, and they're not faces this time, but now they're in shape of something that I now know as, it's called the flower of life. Okay. It's called sacred geometry. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what sacred geometry was until I started looking into, why am I seeing this shape and where have I seen it? And this is a shape that's baked into every major religion, specifically the flower of life. And I'm like, yo, this thing was the size of the ceiling because all the popcorns formed it, right? And so that made me open to the idea that, hey, maybe there are other dimensions that maybe we just don't have access to until we get into another altered state of consciousness like that, right?
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to relate back to some of the theories and writings of Graham Hancock. He's got a bunch of good stuff about this. So his theory is all the cave paintings that we found around the world, these are done only by the shamans, not by just the regular people sitting around their board. They wanted to draw something on the wall. These were all done by the shamans during ceremonies, during ritualistic ceremonies where they did some of the mind-altering drugs that helped them go out of their minds into the mind of the gods. And that's what they were drawing on the cave walls. They were trying to relay what they were seeing, what they were learning, and they wanted to pass that on to people. And Graham Hancock goes into that deeply, and it's really, really interesting. But I think that, when people have a mind-altering drug like that, like people that are doing the ayahuasca, down in South America, where they find the vine and the root that they combine to make the tea that you drink, and it makes you really deathly ill and sick and throw up, and then you have these great visions and stuff. It opens your mind. It broadens your horizon. It allows you to see things that you never would have normally seen with your own human monkey mind. It just doesn't work that way. You have to kind of clear it and go out to another dimension. So yeah, I would think that that would be absolutely just another dimension that we are able to access.
Yeah. Have you ever seen or experienced something that you can't fully explain yourself?
Yes, I have.
You want to go into an example?
Sure. We were doing Stephen Greer has a CE5 protocol that he does to call in beings, and we were starting a Phoenix working group. So two of his main people that live here in Phoenix wanted to get Jim Mann and I involved with the group and start like a Phoenix working group. So we had about 6 or 7 people, and we would go out into the desert and found a spot out there that looked like it was just prime for what we wanted to do. And so we'd go into these deep meditations for maybe 20, 25 minutes, and you're listening to a series of tones that put you into this meditative state. And at this one moment, we all had brand new equipment. I mean, some of the protocols for going out there was you had brand new batteries in your flashlight. You had brand new batteries in your recording device. Your cell phone was fully charged when you went out there. We had everything done in place. And we woke up from this meditation that we had done for about 25 or 30 minutes. And as we opened our eyes, we noticed that there was these little tiny sparky things of light everywhere, all over the hillside, all over the sagebrush next to us, all over people. It was kind of like in the movie Avatar when those little floaty things went down and landed on their arms.
Yeah.
Kind of like that, but they were tiny little sparky things of light, like fireflies. But we don't have fireflies out here. And they were smaller than that, and they would just be like the tiniest little pinpricks of light, but they were everywhere, and they were on our arms. They were around people's heads. They were on the ground, covering the whole hillside, the sagebrush. It was just the trippiest thing I've ever seen. And I thought, oh, well, it's just our eyes have been shut for a long time, and it's just the little synapses, of light going off. But no, everyone was seeing these. It wasn't that.
Could you feel them?
No, could not feel it. But, it just hit me very bizarrely out there. As here we are asking for contact, and the contact that we were getting was a signature of energy. So it wasn't like what we were expecting. The mothership isn't going to land over here on the hillside by us. But we were making contact in some way. There was an energy signature that left itself with us and showed itself. And it lasted about 15 minutes. And then it faded away. And we kept thinking, what time is it? I asked someone across the circle that we were sitting, and I said, hey, what time does your cell phone say? And she reached down in her bag, and she picked up her cell phone, and she dropped it, and she goes, God, that thing's burning hot. So it was so hot, and she picked it up again, and it went, doo-doo-doo-doo. Remember when they all used to make that sound before they went dead?
Yeah.
Went dead right there in her hand.
Huh. And
so someone else picked up their cell phone, same thing, same sound, went dead immediately. So Jim and I are kind of like, wow, let's go check our cell phones back in the car. And as we were walking back to where we were parked, we were kind of joking, thinking, man, these people believe anything, Yeah. We were just kind of, freaked out by it, but still thinking,
still even skeptical.
Yes, still, because this is just so far out of your normal realm of thinking, right? So we went back there and got I saw my cell phone on in my purse through the car window before I even got into it. So why was it on? There's no service out there. It's a complete dead zone out there.
Yeah.
So I checked with Verizon the next day and said, would this work out there? And they're like, no, your cell phones don't work that way. Even if they were roaming, they wouldn't have gone dead. And they wouldn't be hot like that. It doesn't work that way. So mine went dead the second I got it out of my purse. Jim's said, hey, I still got service. I still got it. And as he's touting his stuff there, it went dead.
Huh.
So all of our recording devices went dead. Even the really high quality Marantz recorder that we had out there with us with fresh batteries in it was not working. It did not record anything. So we're thinking, well, this is kind of weird. Not only do we have this weird sparky light thing going on, but now every bit of electronics is dead. I thought, God, I hope the car battery's still working. And the car batteries did. They worked. On our way back into town that night, everything came back to life. Now, when your battery goes down all the way to 0 and it's dead, it doesn't get a charge again until you charge it up.
Yeah.
All of our devices came back on as we drove into town. Every one of them, full charge. So explain that. I don't know what was going on. Something was messing with it. Okay, something was messing with our communication devices as we were trying to communicate with them. That's what I got out of this.
Yeah.
And they left us a signature in the form of light, that energy, that little sparky thing going on. So it was very strange. It was really strange.
Yeah.
I cannot explain that. It happened to us one other time when we went out there and we thought, let's go see if we can duplicate this. And it happened again, not as brilliantly as it did the first time, but yeah, again. So I can't explain.
So it's like the little balls of light and whatnot. Did you feel like there was consciousness within the light or anything like that?
I didn't feel that. I didn't feel a consciousness or a presence. I didn't feel that. Maybe I was just too freaked out by it.
Yeah.
You know, because it was really just the strangest thing I'd ever seen.
How is Greer? Like, does he? I've never met him, but I've heard mixed things. A lot of people definitely are fans, but then like someone like Joe Rogan, I think he is skeptical of everything that guy says.
Yeah. You know, he's a very commanding presence, Dr. Greer. He's very tall, very built, very proud of it. He's done a lot of things that I've heard him talk about and read about, but as part of his working group here in Phoenix, we never experienced anything that I've ever heard happens at his, ambassador to the universe gatherings. So yeah, I'm very skeptical that stuff really happens. I'd seen some video footage just recently about a hoax that he made out on the Outer Banks. I think, North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere over there, the Outer Banks. Yeah. So I don't know. I've met him and talked to him a couple of times and I was not impressed. He's very arrogant, so arrogant that it just kind of made me sick to talk to him. So, maybe it just all went to his head. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he probably has something going on. He might be just super sensitive or just very, able to communicate or thinks he can. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to prove.
The only reason I asked that is because, and it's interesting that you say that about how he tried to hoax something. Apparently, I don't know if I were trying to come up with some type of logical explanation for that, maybe thinking about some type of device where it kind of just, I don't know, like an EMP almost. But if it were an EMP, it wouldn't come back to life right after you get out of the range. But I guess if you were in range of some device that had the capability to zap energy like that, as soon as you got out of range, it would stop affecting your devices, right?
It would seem that way. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That is interesting, though.
Yeah.
The fact that they were just kind of floating balls of light right there.
A lot of people love Stephen Greer. A lot of people really don't care for him at all. So,
do you feel like whatever is here, is it benevolent or is it something that is like pro-humanity or against humanity, or is it one race or a bunch of races? Like, what's your take on all of that?
Well, I've never seen anything malevolent. I want to think, of course, that it's benevolent. I want to think that, yeah, if they came here, they want to help us. Of course. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
They want to see us reach our goals. I think that Homo sapiens are something special. We do have something special going on. And I hope that they're wanting to help us. We kind of need a little bit of help. I don't think we were given everything that we should have been given to help us reach our whatever we're supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, with the Graham Hancock stuff, if they've been around for thousands of years, you got to wonder, like, what is their motivation? What is their mission? What are they trying to accomplish? And even I was thinking the same question after the MUFON meeting with Travis Walton, because if you look at the story from his perspective and the perspective of everybody who was there, very compelling stuff, right? Yeah. But then when you try to take a step back and you look at it from a bird's eye view and you take a skeptical devil's advocate eye, you got to wonder, why was the flying saucer there? Because it seems like what happened was it came, it abducted, it left, it healed, it brought him back, end of story.
Yeah.
Did they have a mission that was there beforehand? What were they trying to accomplish? Because it didn't seem like they were able to do that because Travis got in the way, you know?
Well, from what I've gathered, there's a lot of scout ships, basically, that come to this planet and look around. They might be doing just a scientific thing, gathering data on what's going on, maybe with our livestock, even with the mutilations that we have. Maybe they're just gathering data there. Maybe they were up there in the forest gathering data on something, who knows what. When Travis happened upon that, he was just kind of being an idiot, you know, and jumped out of the truck to get a closer view.
Yeah.
I don't think he was abducted at all. I think abduction is the really wrong word to use for the whole Travis Walton case. It was an ambulance call is what that was. He got in the way when that thing started powering up. He got in the way of the energy of that thing, and it just took him for a ride through the air, shot him through the air 30 feet. Probably killed him. And his friends took off, so they were not able to witness anything else. All we have is Travis's word on this. He woke up inside this, what looked like a ship, being worked on. His buddies took off, and there were 6 of them besides Travis there. So they all took off. They thought he was dead. They were scared to death. They just hauled out of there. So Travis woke up inside what he thought was a ship, and he was being worked on. And so I think that, you know, he probably was killed by this energy that was coming out of the bottom of this ship, or this craft. And they healed him. They brought him back. Maybe they enhanced him. I don't know. I know he's a pretty healthy guy. And he'll admit that he thinks it was an ambulance call. It wasn't an abduction at all. He wasn't taken against his will. It was him being stupid walking out there under this thing, and it got him. The minute he stood up, it got him. He just went into its power field or whatever, and it just zapped him.
Just like any electricity, it just kind of zaps whatever was nearby.
Then, you know, he woke up on there to some things that were being done to him, probably just medical, you know, resuscitation.
Yeah.
And he was very scared, started fighting. They realized his fear level was probably going to keep him from getting better. So they kind of left the room, and something came back in a humanoid form. I think they realized that this might not be so scary for him. Let's make one of us look like him.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know if that's the real
Do you think
story.
it was a disguise or just like their version of Chewbacca, like another
I really don't
species?
know.
Okay.
I don't know, you know, but it came back in looking like a man in a spacesuit. And then he settled down a little bit. So they walked him right off of this thing into what looked like a big hangar.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he woke up alongside the road.
Yeah.
Near Heber. So it's a really interesting story. But yeah, I don't think he got abducted at all. I don't think he was abducted. He just was in the wrong place and did a wrong thing and then was brought back to life.
I mean, I guess that would kind of seem consistent with, you know, if you think about the classic abduction cases, a lot of them are, I have missing time, I have missing memories. The Betty and Barney Hill, didn't they even not remember what happened until hypnotic regression?
Right.
Whereas he remembered pretty much right away. And so if you're thinking comparing him to a classic abduction, they didn't take away his memory.
And he wasn't taken against his will. And that's what the word abduction means. You're taken against your will. Betty and Barney Hill, they were maybe in the wrong place at the wrong time as well. But they were taken. So a lot of people are. You know, we have a lot of abduction cases. People come to us and they tell us what's going on. And luckily MUFON has a team of people that are made up of counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists and people who can really help these people that are they're just really needing help.
Yeah.
You know, they're freaked out by this. We can only do so much as far as their sighting reports. So we finish up that part of the report and then we refer it to the experiencer research team. And that's MUFON's team that they have of helpers that really, they do great work. They're headed up by Kathleen Marden, and she's the niece of Betty Hill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she really knows what she's doing, and they do some great work for these people and really help them through this and help them come to terms with what happened and how to carry on because they're messed up.
Yeah.
And something happened to them that just rocked their world, and you can't always recover from that. Hardly ever, actually. So
is MUFON a place for people to go if they see something? And the reason why I ask this is because earlier this year in March, my buddy who, you know, like I said, I recently got into this and I'll talk about it with my friends and I feel like I've kind of indirectly got them a little bit interested in it. Well, one night my buddy who was on my podcast shortly before this was talking to a group of people at a house on Camelback Mountain, surrounded by a bunch of houses at night. And they see a ball of light appear right above them. And he puts it on his Instagram story. And I recorded the clip on my phone, but it's like 2 concentric spheres within each other. They're balls of light. They have different luminosities, if you will, the different spheres. And it's just hovering there and it's kind of zipping around. And then it changes shape and you don't even notice it in the real time until I slowed down frame by frame. The changes of shape lasted 1 frame. 1 frame, it went to a seashell shape. And in another frame, it shrunk down to this big. And in another frame, it blew back up this big. But it's just 2 concentric spheres just hovering there. And Lou Elizondo actually had an episode about these same spheres of light being seen by pilots in South America.
Right.
And I was like, that's crazy, especially since 9 people saw it right there. But after the fact, I was like, how do we even look into this? We have footage of it, and I wasn't there, but like, how do we even, is MUFON the place where people report that kind of stuff?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
You can write into MUFON. So it's www.mufon.com. Go to the main MUFON website. You'll see a big tab there that says report a UFO. And you just click that and it takes you into a very simple questionnaire that you fill out. And then if you want to, you can fill out a bigger questionnaire, a little more detailed, and then it's shot back down to the state where it originated from. So say it comes to Arizona, it comes to my desk, and then I assign a field investigator to that case. And then the process starts. But as far as coming to the MUFON meetings, and right now with COVID going on, it's just kind of a wreck right now. But we normally have monthly meetings.
Yeah.
It just, we've been doing it for 13 years without missing a month.
Yeah.
We have some great speakers and great topics. And a lot of people do come for the first time because they want to find out if there was anyone else that saw something similar to what they saw.
Yeah.
They just need some validation that, this does happen. I'm not crazy. I wonder if anyone else saw this too. So we have people that come and just want to kind of talk and see what's going on. They don't realize that it's actually a big presentation that they're coming to. It's not a meeting.
Yeah.
It's a big presentation.
It's not people sitting around drinking coffee, eating cookies.
No tinfoil hats, nothing like that. But yeah, we have our meetings at the Arizona Historical Society Museum, which is a big state-run, beautiful marble lobby, giant facility here that asked us if we would come and have our meetings there in their big auditorium. So we said, yeah, sure we will, So we have our meetings in this great place, our presentations in this great place. And we have lecturers from all around the world that we bring in to talk on specific subjects.
Yeah.
And it's a 3-hour talk, and it's $15 a person to come. So it's really the best value around that you're going to get for any kind of entertainment, much less education and the information that you're going to go home with, which is then going to spur you into doing your own research, and you're going to just go down some avenues that you're just going to be the smartest thing around.
Yeah. So let's say from a field investigator standpoint, like one thing that really stood out to me, especially about your bio, is like certified field investigator, and you have a team of investigators. Let's say you get a report like that. How do you discern what you want to actually go out and investigate and what not? And then let's take that case, for example. What's the first kind of steps that you do as an investigation?
Well, you know what? I might be able to bring Tara in on this. She's one of our field investigators. You don't want to talk about this, Tara? Okay. Well, what we do is we have a standard set of things that we talk about, that we ask questions about, that we study, that we look into. Everything's on there. There's nothing on there that's missed. Nothing. We have the weather data. We have, was there an animal present? I mean, a lot of people, this is really funny, we kind of joke about this, but if it wasn't for people smoking cigarettes and walking their dogs, people would never see anything in the sky.
Yeah.
Because most of our reports come in and they say, well, I was out having a smoke walking the dog and I saw, blah, blah, blah. But, we have animal reactions. There's a piece in there that's, how did the animal react to it? Because that's very interesting. Animals react very differently to this weird phenomena.
How do they react? Do they growl like a stranger?
Or sometimes they might tuck their tail between their legs and just whimper and, sometimes they'll break away from their owner with such force they're running home. They're scared to death.
Yeah.
Usually they're scared to death. Okay, it's something that, fear is something that comes over people a lot when they're in the presence of an extraterrestrial, from what I've found out, that there's a big
I
bunch
mean,
of fear.
if
We're
a
not
gray
able.
alien was standing there, I don't know what would. I mean, my brain might just melt. I don't know how I'd be able to
Yeah.
process that.
And even that's what Travis Walton says too, that there's something that comes over you. There's the biggest sense of fear. I think that they can instill that in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I've never had the experience myself, but
So let's say you say, all right, this video looks great, and I'll even show it to you after we get done here. But like, let's say you go out and you're like, all right, I want to investigate this. Do you just start door knocking and saying, hey, did you see this? Hey, did you see this?
in certain cases, yeah.
Okay.
If they say, yeah, it happened right over our neighborhood here, everyone had to have seen it. It was just
Yeah.
huge. Well, yeah. Yeah, that investigator would then, go and have an interview with that person. And maybe, yes, if needed, they might go knocking on some doors and asking some questions. There might
Yeah.
be, witness 2, 3, 4, and 5 that then they go and talk to also. Get everyone's testimony, and then you start putting it together. So there's a set of protocols that we use.
Okay.
And if someone wants to become a field investigator for MUFON, it's a training that you go through, and we have you work with one of our seasoned field investigators for your first 4 or 5 cases. So you're never alone. We work as a team.
Yeah.
We've got 19 field investigators here in Arizona, and they're all trained exactly the same. So it is MUFON's. It's the backbone of MUFON is the field investigations.
And the protocols that go along with that.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One random thing that I wanted to ask you about, kind of on the interdimensional topic, is I personally saw this thing when I was in high school, and I thought it was like a demon or a ghost at the time. I now believe it was interdimensional. I've talked about this on my podcast before, but there was a recent update where I've met one other person who saw the exact same thing, and how it relates to the UFO, not even conspiracy, but just like narrative, is we talk about the Men in Black and the Men in Black show and say, don't say anything or we're going to hurt you or whatever. And some people say the Men in Black don't even look human. There's a non-human aspect to it. Well, when I was in high school, I saw basically, I moved into a house, and I've always been the type of guy who, even as a kid, I would walk into a room and I would feel like, I don't like this room. There's some bad energy in here. Like I would feel sick and nauseous to my stomach type of thing. And I was like really, I guess, afraid of ghosts and whatnot, right? But when I was in high school, I moved into this house at the Lake of the Ozarks, and being that it's at the Lake of the Ozarks and we're kind of going down to the lake, we're built, and it's kind of like your window, even if you're on the bottom floor, is like 20 feet off the ground, And so what I would see happening first few months that I lived in that house was I'd be like turning, and in my peripheral, I'll see this window that's like 10, 15 feet off the ground. A black shadowy figure crosses the window, and it's got distinct features: wide brimmed hat, long trench coat, kind of looks like a Men in Black, and it's a black shadow figure. Well, when I moved into that house, I told my parents one thing: if we move here, I love this house, just don't put me in that room in the basement at the end of the hallway, because when I go there, I just get real bad vibes. Even right now, I'm kind of getting goosebumps talking about it. Well, sure enough, we move in, they make that my room. I have no say in the matter. So I'm going to bed at night, and here's the other part that is kind of interesting. It's not like you only see this shadow in the dark. I saw this shadow every night for years, right? And what would happen is the TV would be on, and there would be nothing in the window, right? There's a window here, there's trees in the background, and so you can kind of see branches and shadows moving and whatnot. But as soon as the TV's off and there's no electrical interference, the light's off, TV's off, it could even be daytime, this shadow figure, where it's just the size of the windowsill that's 20 feet off the ground, is just standing there. Long black trench coat, wide black brim hat. And it looks kind of like a Men in Black. And it would just stand there. It never moved, but like the branches behind it are kind of waving around. And so in high school, I saw this for years. I would go out during the day and I would study the trees. I'd try to study the shadows. I'm like, I must be crazy. It's just standing there. And I mean, you're at night, you're tired, you don't know if it's real or not. And what gave me goosebumps and why I bring it up now is like literally a couple months ago, I was going through Amazon Prime looking for something to watch, and I see the exact picture of exactly what I saw. And it's this documentary called The Hat Man. And I watched the Hat Man documentary, and it's case after case after case of all these people seeing this same shadow figure, and they get this negative energy whenever they see it. Same thing for me. What's crazy is I had a deep down gut feeling that if I tried to ever tell anybody about this while I was in high school, that it would not be there and it wouldn't show itself. And it was, I guess as a kid, the way I could relate to that feeling is every time I tried to show my parents a magic trick I've been working on, I always mess it up, right? And so for this one, I'm like, I want to tell someone about this. I don't want to feel crazy that I'm seeing this thing every night when I go to bed and I just got to sleep with the TV on so it's not standing there. Well, one day I go to verify it's still there. I turn off the lights. It's daytime. I'm like, I can still see it pretty clear. My buddy's outside. I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell him. And this is like freshman to senior year of high school. It's my senior year. And I'm like, I'm finally going to tell someone. I'm going to test this theory. And so I tell him about it. I'm like, it's going to be crazy. It's going to sound crazy when I tell you about it. I told him about it. He's like, all right, show me. Go up and show him. Not there. Haven't seen it since. Haven't even thought about it since until I saw the documentary. Well, anyways, Clark, who was at the MUFON meeting with me, who's been on my podcast, we've talked a lot about UFOs and aliens. He has a girlfriend who I asked her the same question. Have you ever experienced anything you can't explain? And she said, I've seen a ghost when I was in my childhood home. And my mom still lives there, and my mom would always see it too. I was like, okay, describe it to me. She goes, yeah, it had like this top hat. It was like kind of a shadow figure. Didn't even think anything of it, right? And she said, yeah, my mom had more experiences where it assaulted her sexually, and she had sexual intercourse with this thing. And I'm like, all right, that's crazy, right? So randomly I get the idea. Last week, I sent her a picture of the Hat Man, the same exact thing that I saw. Just Google image the Hat Man and you'll find a bunch of them. I was like, is this the thing that you saw? Same hat. She goes, oh my God, to the detail, exactly what I saw.
That's interesting.
Makes me think it's kind of interdimensional, right?
Well, it would have to be.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's...
And I've always wondered about the Men in Black. You know, there's Nick Redfern is a speaker that we had come in, and he has written a couple books on the Men in Black and the Women in Black. Okay, he's got all kinds of great stuff about the women in black. Same kind of thing. But, you know, I've always wondered about that. Why are they dressed in like 1950s stuff?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make them stand out just a little bit more to anyone that saw them?
Yeah.
You know, in today's day and age, why are they still dressed in like 1950s black suits and fedora hats and stuff like that? Because anyone's going to look at that and go, who's that? You know?
Yeah.
What are they wearing? So it's just strange to me that they can't update their wardrobe for one thing, you know, and maybe blend in a little bit better. I don't understand that.
What I thought of when I saw it was it kind of reminded me of the Jeepers Creepers movie. You ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
It reminded me more of that because it had the long trench coat and the wide brim hat. It wasn't like a 1950s fedora, but it kind of does look like a Men in Black standing there just kind of like observing you. And I don't know, like... That's where I find a lot of like relevance in the whole topic of interdimensional beings. But now we're really getting into the whole paranormal side of things. But like you said, I think people misinterpret that word. It has a stigma, but it really just literally means outside of the norm, you know? But I'm fascinated even with I haven't looked into Bigfoot at all. Like where did you kind of get into the whole Bigfoot stuff?
You know, I don't know. I've always been really fascinated by it though. Still am. I've read a lot of books on Bigfoot. We've had, at our MUFON presentations, we don't talk just UFOs all the time. We talk a whole varied, you know, bunch of stuff. Bigfoot is something that we talk about there. So we've had 3 different Bigfoot speakers come in.
Okay.
David Paulides, who people might know from the Missing 411 series, which is one of the most interesting speakers and stuff out there. So if no one knows what I'm talking about, look up David Paulides, Paulides. And he has I think his organization is called the Can-Am Project. So Canadian-American Can-Am Project. And he does stuff called Missing 411. And he's got a series of books out there about people that have gone missing, unexplainable, completely freakish stuff, mostly in our national parks. And they say that they don't keep track of anyone that goes missing in their parks. We all know that's crazy. Anyway, look into David Paulides. He started out talking about Bigfoot. He was a Bigfoot researcher at the beginning, and he doesn't really do the Bigfoot thing too much anymore. He's bringing it back a little bit because there's some really interesting DNA studies that are going on with some of the hair and stuff that they found from Bigfoot. I'm fascinated by the subject. I don't know why. I just am. I just think it's really fun. Yeah. You know, I loved that show, Harry and the Hendersons, when it came out. You know, that was really fun. I think it's interesting that Chewbacca, you know, is... basically a Sasquatch, there's all kinds of great stuff about it. I lived in the Northwest for a long time, so maybe just seeing that stuff around there, I was always looking for Bigfoot, and even here in Arizona, we go camping and we'll look for Bigfoot and hunt Tara.
Try to find a footprint or something.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go knock on trees and we'll do some howls out there and stuff. That's just kind of crazy and fun. But the Arizona Navajo Rangers, who are good friends of ours, and they are an elite police force up on the Navajo Nation, they told us about so many Bigfoot sightings. And you think that, oh no, that's only like in the Northwest or the heavily forested areas, real remote wilderness stuff. No, we have a ton of that in Arizona. And the Navajo people out there on the nation, they're remote. This is a rural thing. They don't have any neighbors close by. They're not looking for fame or fortune. They don't want to talk to white man. Yeah. Why would they lie about this stuff? It's really interesting. And the Rangers themselves have seen Bigfoot sightings. They've seen the footprints. They've talked to the people that have seen them. They may have even seen them themselves. I can't remember exactly right now, but this is legit stuff. Yeah. It's not made up fairy tale woo-woo stuff. It's legit.
Well,
can't explain it.
With the Bigfoot, so I actually have a biology degree, and so being that, I don't know, I guess I have the biological science background, I try to look for like signs of life that you were talking about, how there's not a lot of it before. Like, it's not like you're finding a bone, you're not finding skulls, you're not finding a family of these things, which makes me, again, I haven't really looked a whole lot into it specifically, but from what you've told me, I will now, right? But it seems like if you're looking at this from an unbiased scientific point of view, there's got to be signs of just like gathering sticks. I built a structure, or like a something for protection from the weather or the elements. Anything like a family, a small Bigfoot, a big Bigfoot, a female Bigfoot. Are these mostly just eyewitness accounts, or are there actual footprints that are not obviously like created by a man?
There's real actual casts of footprints that have been found. Actually up at Idaho State University, Pocatello, where I went to school. Dr. Meldrum, what's his first name? I know the last name is Meldrum, Meldrum. He runs one of the programs up there, and maybe it's the biology program, I can't remember, but he's one of the major Bigfoot researchers in the world. And he's got some amazing stuff up there. So, but there's people all over the world that have casts of Bigfoot prints that have been proven legit.
Are these Bigfoot sightings coming from basically similar climate types, or are they kind of spread out everywhere?
All over the place. And they're called different things in different places.
Okay.
There's Bigfoot, there's Sasquatch, there's a skunk ape, there's Yeti, there's, all kinds of things depending on.
Do you think these are all terms that are naming the same thing?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. They may be slightly different, depending on the climate that they're living in, of course, and, their surroundings. But yeah, I think it's the same creature.
I'll be honest, I've never heard before this interview, like talking about Bigfoot in terms of being interdimensional. And kind of the reason why I wanted to talk more about it after bringing up the Hat Man is because if I'm thinking about interdimensional, maybe the hat trench coat is like the device that allows this being to access our dimension. Maybe, right?
Could be. Anything's possible.
But with a Yeti, with a Bigfoot, I mean, these are naked, hairy animals, right? So I guess maybe I just don't understand the technology, but how would that be possible?
I don't know. I wish I knew. Yeah. I really do. It's just a really interesting subject. There's a lot to it.
What do you think would be like the holy grail evidence? Because even if you saw it, like what?
If someone were to shoot one and bring it in, and there's a lot of people out there that they're looking just for that fame and fortune of doing that. Yeah. But yeah. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. Really. Yeah. There's a lot of hunters out there. They go in a lot of remote areas. They see stuff. So I'm really surprised that one hasn't been shot and brought in yet.
I had a whole list of questions I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
I want to reference this real quick.
Do that.
All right, cool. What's one thing that I guess you're most fascinated by after you've gotten into MUFON? Is there a specific part of the story of what's happening that interests you the most, you gravitate more towards?
And it's more on the archaeological side, and that being the origins of mankind.
I see.
So a lot of us, grew up with the same stories, mainstream Christian religion stories about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark, things like that. And the more that you look into things, the more that you see that these stories have popped up around the planet in different places, a little bit different scenario going on. But you really have to go to the source of things. And to me, the source of things would be the Sumerian Tablets.
Yeah.
So the Sumerian Tablets are, oh man, there's just so many of them. There might be 1 million of these things written on clay tablets that were, right now I'm going to say they were 3,313 years older than the writings of the Old Testament. That's the age of these Sumerian tablets. They're written in stone. There's things going on in there that are described in detail that are beyond anyone's imagination that you think may have lived at that time, early man, okay? So you were talking earlier about maybe other beings have inhabited the planet at different times. I truly believe that. I think that, I think our scientists have known that this planet has turned itself over. Poles, everything has turned itself over 4 or 5 times that they can prove. There's a new beginning after every one of that. So the story goes in the Sumerian tablets that this planet was seeded by a race of beings called the Anunnaki. They came here looking for gold, and they found that this planet was very rich in that mineral resource. So they came here, kind of camped out, decided that that's really a lot of hard work, this gold mining, we're getting tired of this. Can't we find some creature here to do this for us? What about these creatures that are bipedal, that are walking around out here? Maybe we could train them to do something. So they combined their seed with this creature and created Homo sapiens. Then a second tweaking came in, and they created Homo sapiens sapiens. That's us. So we've been tweaked through our DNA to be who we are today. So this is complete blasphemy to anyone that is looking at this with a mainstream religious thing, okay? I grew up a very religious person, Sunday school, all that stuff, just like most of us did. And I'm not saying that that cannot be true, but there's another story out here that looks a little more scientifically legitimate than just something that could be considered a fairy tale. I don't know the truth of these things. I don't want to make any enemies trying to find that out. But again, people, look into it. Look into this. Go look up anything you can find about the Sumerian tablets, about the Anunnaki. It's spelled Anunnaki. They came from a planet called Nibiru, which is what people are calling Planet X, or the 12th planet.
Is this the one that they think might have been blown up in an interplanetary war, and that's where the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter comes in?
No, Nibiru is huge, and it's on a very long, very elliptical orbit around the sun, and it only comes around every, 3,000 years or something like that. So we have, yet to see them come back around.
Do we know, is this an actual astrological body that astronomers can point to and they know exists for a fact? Or is it only in these clay tablets?
Some astronomers will say, yeah, we see it. We see this tiny little glowy thing out there. We don't know what it is. And we see its pull on some of the other planets in the area. So we know something's out there, but we can't quite get a grip on it. But they can see that the other planets act around it. So that's how you know that something's in the vicinity. And there's some that are going to say, oh, that is just BS. That is such a fairy tale. So you've got a variety of people.
Yeah. So I've heard that narrative as well. Isn't there Zachariah Sitchin? I haven't read his book, but I hear that's a good...
numerous books on the subject. Numerous books. So Michael Tellinger wrote a book called The Slave Species of God, God with a little g.
Yeah.
It's different than the Almighty that we're talking about. So that's a great book to read on that. And then anything that Zechariah Sitchin wrote all centers around that subject.
Yeah.
A really good one that really spells out a narrative of one of the sons of the god of this planet.
Yeah.
Is called The Lost Book of Enki, Enki. That's a great book, The Lost Book of Enki. So, but you can look anything up on the internet and find out about the Sumerian Tablets and find out, the majority of them are housed in a museum in London right now.
Are these the tablets? Are these the ones that were found in a cave where someone threw a rock in the cave and they heard a crash and they went in there afterwards?
No, that was the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay.
But these were found, somewhere around there too. I mean, it's ancient stuff. The Garden of Eden is somewhat there. Eden was spelled Edin, not Eden. It's where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers meet, right over there in the Persian Gulf. So there's a lot of really great parallels.
Yeah.
And seeing how these were written a long time before the Old Testament, a lot of people think that the Old Testament was just simply another version that someone wrote, and then it made itself into all kinds of other stuff that rolled into the New Testament.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting, really interesting. And I don't know how this many tablets of this stuff going on could be
ignored,
completely made up.
Yeah.
Okay. People back then didn't have imaginations on this stuff. They had nothing to compare this to. Nothing flew in the skies back then except for birds. How could they make this stuff up? They couldn't. They didn't have the vocabulary or even the imagination to make this up.
Yeah. It
So
wasn't
when you
even.
look at that.
That's like the definition of outside the box thinking if they were doing that.
So, yeah, but it's really a fascinating story written down in those tablets.
Let's say somehow a genie makes it so to where that is confirmed absolute truth. Anunnaki, mining gold. Does that change your outlook on life, your motivations day to day?
It does.
How so?
And even when you look at what's going on with our politics today, are we really voting someone in that's going to be the leader of the free world? Are humans really capable of making a decision like that? I don't think so. I don't think that's voting at all. I think that is an appointed position that's been laid out a long time before this ever came to pass. Why would they trust humans? Look at us. We're horrible. Why should we be trusted with voting in someone who's going to be the leader of the free world? I really believe that this world is run by a super secret elite bunch of people. Probably it all stems from money. It's all about money. Those who are richest get to run the place. And it's probably all run by the Anunnaki above them.
Have you heard about, well, I guess this is my question is, I've heard the Anunnaki, but I've also heard about the reptilians. Mm-hmm. Are these two like part of the same story here?
Well, when you think about how many times this earth has turned itself over and started over again, say the Anunnaki were only the latest ones that came. Okay, it was 800,000 years ago that they came here. That's less than 1 million years. This planet's pretty old. Okay, so they're just the latest ones that came. Say before them, there was this whole thing going on with us. Maybe that was the reptilians. Maybe the time before that, it was the Pleiadians. That could very well be. That at each time there was someone that was master of the universe at that point in time and got to run everything on this planet. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, you hear so much talk about the different species of these beings that, and the reptilians, that they've been here forever. Well, maybe they were here before this all happened. And maybe whatever cataclysm happened to the planet, maybe they did hide underground.
Yeah.
And then they're still here. So we are co-indigenous with these people.
Yeah.
There's a lot to ponder.
There is a hell of a lot to ponder. Yeah. And one thing that really does fascinate me, if, going along the lines of like, you kind of just put it out there, whereas you believe that there's basically a one world order that's kind of running things behind the scenes. And have you heard about this, like, the 12-year-old girl who kind of mapped the genealogy of all the presidents, and like all but 3 of them or something were all related to a king?
Yeah.
And
I did read that. Yeah.
I mean, how crazy is that? And I would say that's pretty much corroborating evidence if you want to talk about conspiracies, right?
Oh, that's great conspiracy fodder. Yeah, it is. That's great stuff.
Yeah. Going along the other lines is talking about how you believe that the Anunnaki and whatnot. Have you also heard about Mars having like this trace element that's only made possible through, I forget what the exact element is, but it's like this can only be created as from what we know through nuclear explosions, and it's like everywhere on Mars.
It's element 115.
Not element 115. It's like a nuclear. It's like a trace element of like some nuclear blast.
Do you remember what it's called?
It might be xenon. Xenon, an isotope of it.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that?
I have. Yeah.
That, I mean, something like that makes me wonder, like, was that where humans originated, and then somehow we got brought over here?
You know, it could be. Mars was once very much like this planet. It had life, it had green, it had water, and something really bad happened to that. So they're thinking it was nuclear explosion. Well, it talks all about this in the Sumerian Tablets, exactly how it all happened, and about nuclear war on this planet between those warring. The Anunnaki were fighting amongst themselves for domination. So to think that, well, why are we like we are today? Well, God, they made us that way.
Huh.
They made us in their own image. Exactly. So that's why we're warlike with each other, too.
Yeah.
They were very much warlike. And they had giant nuclear explosions and stuff happening over in the Middle East. And there's scars on the planet. You can see it from Google Earth if you look at it.
Huh. One thing that I was talking with Michael Polani about was this character named Valiant Thor, who apparently came, and I'm sure you guys know of him. But, I mean, talking about nuclear weapons, wasn't his whole shtick like he wants us to stop the nuclear bombs because it'll apparently destroy the fabric of the universe or something?
Right. Yeah.
Can you explain that?
You know, I'm not a Valiant Thor fan.
Why do you say that?
I just don't think I believe that.
Okay.
I don't know. It just, for one thing, the name Valiant Thor just hits me wrong. You know, it's just something that's
very science
so
fiction-y.
Marvel Comics. You know, it's just so weird. Valiant Thor. I just can't believe that would be a name from, you know, this being that is all knowing. And yeah, I just can't buy into that. I don't know why. It just sounds too weird. And I've heard the whole story about Valiant Thor, seen the pictures. I just can't buy into it. I just can't.
Yeah.
It's just, I just can't. It's just too far-fetched.
Yeah, I don't know much
stuff
about
is
it.
just
That's
too
why I
much.
asked you.
Yeah.
What about it is like where you go, nah. Was it just the name?
The name and then the pictures. You know, he's sitting with the Kennedys and he's sitting with the, you know, the beautiful people.
Yeah.
And he's a very beautiful people. He's perfect. Where'd this model come from?
Yeah.
You know, it's just weird to me. I just can't buy into it for some reason. I just have this block against the whole Valiant Thor thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On one hand, I got to ask myself, like, okay, if this was not real and Valiant Thor had no legitimacy, how does he get connected to all these people? Why is he depicted hanging out with these high-level politicians? But on the other hand, coming from I'm a coach. I teach social dynamics. I teach men how to talk to women and things like that. And it's all like there's this thing called the halo effect in psychology. And the halo effect is basically we are more likely to give the benefit of the doubt to people we perceive as physically attractive.
Right.
Right.
Well, he hung out with the beautiful people because he was a beautiful people.
Yeah. So anything he
You know.
said, if he, just by the way he looks and carries himself, they probably were just like, this guy means
Yeah,
business.
and you think
You're
of
from Venus? We
How
believe
this
you.
was way back then in the late 50s and the early 60s. Look at Jackie Kennedy. Look at Marilyn Monroe. Look at all them. They were all that same beautiful, polished thing going on. And that's what Valiant Thor looks like in the pictures that I've seen. Way too pretty.
Yeah.
You know, just to be real.
Yeah.
And they just gravitated to that maybe. And I don't know.
But the fact that he was trying to get us to stop the nuclear weapons and then tying it back to what you said about the Anunnaki having nuclear war.
Yeah.
That could be a connection there, right?
Mm-hmm. It could be some other species trying to help us out.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a lot of things that have in the UFO community that have come to pass where we think that they might be helping us to not delve into nuclear physics. The Air Force bases up in Montana, Malmstrom Air Force Base. Robert Salas was commissioned up there, and he speaks about this all the time. He's got a great talk on this. He's got a book called Fated Giant, and it's a really great book. But he talks about, you know, how they had the bunkers underground with all the nuclear stores and the missiles underground in the silos, and these extraterrestrial craft came over and just hovered over everything, shut everything down. Didn't blow it up. Okay, they weren't here to hurt us, maybe, I don't know. But they shut everything down, shut the whole thing down. So you have to wonder, well, were they trying to do this just as a show of superior force, that they can do this? We can do this to you guys. Look what we can do to you. Or were they trying to just tell us something, say, quit, quit, because, the kids have found the matches. Bad thing on this planet when the kids find the matches. So, but there's many instances about that, even over the whole Bentwaters case over in England. There was nuclear armament under the ground there in bunkers. And they think that that's what caused those craft to fly over there too, is that they were attracted to the nuclear arsenal that we had in different parts of the world. And they're coming over and they're just trying to tell us something like, guys, don't, doesn't pay in the end.
Yeah.
Could be, maybe we got to listen.
Well, I mean, technically, if you want to get into like morals and ethics and right, you're right. There's nothing good that can come from having nuclear weapons. It's like you show up to a party with 5 people and one of them has a gun and it's on his waist and he's just like walking around like, hey, what's up, guys? Hey, don't piss me off, right? And if my dog started playing with knives, I would probably put an end to that right away. And being that the fact that like talking about evidence, this is one of the common things among all the countries is like these things are appearing over our nuclear bombs and our nuclear silos.
Right.
That is very intriguing. Along the same lines, I'm sure being that you're the state director of the Phoenix MUFON, you must have a lot of people coming to you with their accounts, their stories. Mm-hmm. How do you discern who to listen to and who not to listen to?
Well, we listen to everyone. That's the thing. Okay. We listen to everyone because some people might be able to interpret that better than other people. Some people are just weirded out by it. We have to listen to everyone. So anyone who wants to go onto the site and make out a report, we investigate it, no matter what. So we listen to everyone. Some of them are short-lived. Some of them are complete hoaxes. There's a lot of people out there with nothing better to do than create a great hoax, and we can find that out too in a heartbeat.
Yeah. How do you do that? Just going out and okay.
Well, if there's interviewing, determining some healthy versus unhealthy mental states, sometimes medication, missed medication, and then just people who, we had a couple where, and it looked really good. The stuff looks really good at first, but then when we have our photo and analyst check it out and slow everything down and find out all the data that he can about this filming and everything, we saw that this guy was filming the light thing on the ceiling. It was great, though. I mean, he did a really good job of it, but that's exactly what it was.
Dang.
So there's a lot of stuff out there that people, I guess they just want to see if they can do it, or maybe they have nothing better to do in life. I don't know.
Yeah, he's probably just like, oh, I could fool a lot of people with this photo. Yeah.
So, we have a lot of hoaxes.
Yeah.
But we listen to everyone and we investigate everything that comes in.
Okay. Let's say you get in conversation with a skeptic, and I don't know if this has happened or not. What's like the 1 or 2 pieces of evidence that you point out and say, explain this, like this is undeniable?
The Phoenix Lights. That's the first thing I would put to them. And just the amount of witness testimony that you can have on any one case. Are you calling all these people a liar? Everyone? Really?
Yeah.
They're not.
Huh.
So, witness testimony is a big one. Eyewitness testimony is huge. So if someone writes in a report and it's just them, we can investigate that, and we will. But if they have 2 or 3 witnesses along with them that can corroborate that story, that's the good stuff there. More than one witness always, counts for a little bit more.
Yeah.
It makes it much more interesting, and you can, work with it a little more.
Do you feel, or do you see spikes in like reported sightings based off of like, an alien movie just came out or something like that?
We do.
How does that?
After Unidentified came out, we had a spike because I think people were looking up more. People were outside looking up. They realized that stuff's there. We're just not noticing it. We're not looking up. We're looking down at the sidewalk and counting the cracks in the sidewalk when we're walking instead of looking up. Or maybe we don't go out in the wilderness enough. Maybe we don't go out and see the real stars. Here in Phoenix, our stars are drowned out by all this city light. We can barely see any stars at all here. But you go 50 miles outside of town, and it's a whole new world. So, we have a lot of people that, will find stuff or they'll remember something. Say they see a show about UFOs or something, they're like, oh my gosh, that happened to me.
Yeah.
They'll remember something from their childhood and they'll write that in. So even something from 50 years ago, they can write in and report into us. There's not a lot we can do about something that's that historical.
Yeah.
But we will listen and we will take it down and add it to the database just as information only.
Yeah.
So
Do you ever get people from like actual government positions or like legit people coming to you saying, hey, I got to tell you something?
yeah, we do have people that are considered whistleblowers that come in and say things, and we just take their information down and add it to the database too. Information only.
Yeah.
We can't prove or disprove what they're saying as truth.
And are like not specifically just like people filling out a form on your website, but like contacting Stacy from Phoenix MUFON. Hey, I got to tell you something.
Yeah, and they do. I get all kinds of great emails.
Yeah.
But when they do, I tell them, well, that is an amazing story. You know, that's really interesting. Thank you so much for writing in. But if you want us to spend time and put this into an actual field investigation, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to MUFON.com, report it in on the regular questionnaire, and then we'll get someone right on it. So it has to be done, per the protocol.
Have you ever had anything told to you in privacy off the record where you're like, oh my God?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
All the time.
And it's
crazy good stuff.
Stuff that you believe based on evidence, or just like, if that's true, that'll change everything?
No, it's not based on evidence because it happened to that person, not me. I'm just hearing it third party. So yeah, everything's a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, some of this stuff is just awesome.
Anything you'd be willing to share?
No, there's not.
Okay.
But yeah, we hear stories all the time. I get emails from people all the time.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So a long time ago, pretty much right when I started this podcast and I got really interested in this topic, I came up with a document of my own. I was like, if I ever meet an alien, I don't want to be unprepared. So I had questions to ask an alien.
Well, that's good. Yeah,
right?
It's good to be prepared.
So my question to you is, if you had the opportunity to sit down for 10 minutes with an alien and he knows all the answers, what's your questions that you ask him?
Why in the world did you make it so that we can get sick so easily? If they were the ones that created our DNA, and if they are immortal, why? Why us? Why did you give this to us? Why do we age so fast? 80 years on this planet is not very long. Why do you make it so that we only have 80 productive years?
So would that be the first question or just one of the questions?
One of them.
Okay.
I'd have to sit and think about
that would have
all my questions. But that's a good one, though.
It is a good one, but it also assumes that they did create us,
Yeah.
Even if they did create us, that makes me curious.
Or I could say, who created us? Do you yourself believe in a creator? Who is your God? Do you believe in praise and worship to this God? Or is that just something that's strictly human and weird?
Yeah.
Because I've heard that from some people, that they've got that information from extraterrestrials that say, we don't understand why you guys worship. Why do you worship God? It's not to be worshipped. It just is.
Yeah. I think that's the ultimate question.
Yeah. It's a different spin on things.
Who do you worship?
Uh-huh.
So you've heard other people say, are these like government people who have said that?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Just regular folks that have had communication with extraterrestrials.
So they actually had the opportunity to ask the extraterrestrial questions.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's people that have very frequent communication with extraterrestrials.
Huh. And is this through like...
or so they say. I cannot prove that, but yes, they tell me this. Yeah.
Well, when they tell you this, do they say, I sat down in a room and talked to it? Or is it like, I was remote viewing last night and it drew it out in my journal, Oh,
usually they'll say, that they were contacted, that they were woken up in the middle of the night, or they were missing time happens a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, all kinds of different instances.
Huh.
Yeah.
Part of, if you got to wonder, like, who can I trust? Who can I not trust? Was it a dream in the middle of the night?
Right.
What if the Sumerian tablets, the clay tablets, were their version of fiction novels thousands of years ago? Is that a possibility?
Sure.
And being that we're so out of the context, we're like looking back saying, what are they trying to tell us? And it's really just their form of entertainment. Is that a possibility?
Anything's possible. I have learned that anything is possible. But when you look at the stuff that they're writing in the Sumerian tablets, they couldn't possibly have come up with this stuff because it just didn't exist for them back then. they're writing about stuff that just isn't part of their world. So either this scribe had a really vivid imagination or I don't know what, but I mean, there's some stuff there that just you sit and think about this and you're like, no, they couldn't have made this up.
Yeah.
It didn't exist in their world and their whole paradigm.
Huh. This is a really off the wall question, and I asked Clark before this podcast if he wanted me to ask you any specific questions, and this is one of them. He gave me like 4 of them. Has anybody that you've spoken to claimed to have ever had sex with an alien?
Yes.
Has there ever been that?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, tell me more. Now I'm intrigued.
Well, a couple that I've heard, it was reptilians,
Okay.
and they said they were just great
Great at sex. Okay, so it was a female who said she had sex with a
female
reptilian.
telling me this. Yes.
Was the reptilian like an alligator that walked? It was bipedal, or was it like a snake?
More of a alligator man looking thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
they're all kind of like alligator people.
what did
A
you
little
say
bit.
when you were told this?
Like, really?
Okay.
Really? Wow, really? You know, I mean,
Was he a smooth talker? How big was he?
yeah. So I have heard that. Yeah.
I've heard that the reptilians have such a bad, pungent smell. And again, like for all we know, we're just talking about science fiction, right? Because we
Right.
haven't experienced it ourselves. But have you heard the same thing? I would feel like that's a deal breaker for sex, right?
I haven't heard that they have a bad smell, but I've heard that they're just they emit emotions of extreme fear and just bad feelings. Bad.
I mean, I would be
You
really
would know when
surprised.
you're in the presence of one. It's just horribly bad.
Do they wear clothes? Like a top hat and trench coat?
You know, I don't know about that. I don't recall hearing about that, whether they were covered with scales or if they had, polo shirts on. I don't know.
Interesting. Well, being that we talked about sex with an alien, I think we've literally hit everything in this
Pretty much,
podcast. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And is there anything you want to shout out? MUFON, anything big coming up for all the listeners who are still here?
Well, MUFON is plugging right along. COVID has not stopped the sightings or anything like that. I mean, we have a database full of information. You can go to the MUFON website and find out anything you want to know. You can become a member of MUFON. You can become a field investigator. All the information is right there if you'd like to do that. A lot of the groups, of course, aren't having in-person meetings right now, but they're having some virtual meetings, so you can find something in pretty much any state you're in right now. Phoenix MUFON is doing a live streaming lecture series. We haven't had one. The last one we had was in early November. It was James Fox speaking that day. So we'll probably have another one coming up in January, and hopefully with some restrictions being lifted on COVID, we're all hoping for this in the spring. We'll get back to doing some in-person meetings. Phoenix MUFON hosts the boot camp every year. It's held in November right here in Mesa, Arizona. So that'll be coming up. And then MUFON will be holding their annual big symposium. It'll be in Las Vegas this year in July. And they'll have great speakers from all over the world coming in for that. And that's about 4 days of great fun, good information, awesome stuff going on there.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be attending some of these myself. Well,
Okay,
thank you so
good.
much. And
Thank you.
see you later, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Peace.